Hey guys, welcome back to my channel Entertainment. This is Supreeta. If you guys are new here, hi, I'm a recent medical graduate from India. I gave my step 1 exam recently and I passed. And in the recently posted video where I had talked about how I passed step 1 in 4 months, I got a lot of messages and comments asking me to talk about my NBME scores and how I reviewed my NBMEs to improve my score from a 56% to an 83%. I have tried to be very transparent with my scores, how much I was scoring, how I tried to improve, all those things in this video, and I really hope it is helpful to you guys. So without further ado, let's get started. So if you look at the table that I have put down here, I have compiled all the self-assessments and the NBMEs I took in an order, the percentage I scored in each of it, and the last section is UWorld done. Now what UWorld done is basically the percentage of questions that I had completed in UWorld. So for example, I gave UWSA 1, I was done with only 2 to 3% of UWorld, but by the time I gave my NBME 29, I was done with 78% of UWorld. So that is what UWorld done means. So this was an overview of my NBME score progression. Now I'll show you guys each week what I did, what resources I used, how I analyzed my NBMEs to improve my score. Okay, so let's go to this. I started with UWSA 1, right, and then after 15 days I gave my NBME 27, in which I scored a 69%. So the major change that I did here was to start solving 80 to 120 questions of UWorld per day. Now this was the major game changer that improved my NBME scores. But this was sort of a stressful period for me because UWorld had around 4,000 questions and I had just started doing UWorld. So I knew that if I had to, take my exam soon, I was supposed to do a lot of questions per day. So I started with 80 questions initially, and then slowly I moved on to almost 120 questions per day with review. So I used to solve 3 blocks every day, right, which used to take 3 hours, and I used to review each block for at least 2 hours. So in total, every single day, I used to read at least a minimum of 9 hours. This was supposed to happen because I was supposed to finish UWorld by the time my exam, approached. So this was the major change that improved my score from UWSA 1 to NBME 27. And in UWSA 1, I noticed that they had asked a lot of questions on genetics and molecular biology, which I had sort of neglected. I had given a lot of importance to the system-wise topics like cardiovascular, neuro, all these things, and I had sort of neglected the general sciences. I had not revised the molecular biology and genetics thing, and that gave me the biggest downfall for UWSA 1 because UWSA 1 focused a lot on basic sciences. So what I did was for molecular biochemistry, I went ahead and watched Hi Guru's videos. He has a 1 hour or 2 hour video in which he completely covers the entire molecular biochemistry that you're supposed to know. So this was just like a high yield rapid review. So I just did this in one day, and it greatly improved my knowledge of molecular biochemistry. So this was my first week of progression in NBME scores. Now let's go to the second week. So the next thing I gave after my NBME 27 was my free 120, right? So but you can see here that from my NBME 27 to my free 120, I did not progress really that much. It was just a 2% increase. I went from a 69% to a 71%, and this was a little disappointing because I was expecting a little bit more of improvement, because by now I had already done 60% of UWorld, but there was only a 2% increase in my score. So that was a little bit of a disappointment to me, but I did not give up hope. The thing is, at this point, when I got a 71%, I actually went ahead and scheduled my step 1 exam. People usually say that if you are crossing 70% on an NBME, you should be, safe to go ahead and schedule your exam. So once I got a 71%, I went ahead and scheduled my exam, step 1 exam for Jan 10th. What I did to improve between my NBME 27 to my free 120 was, again, I reviewed what had happened. So when I reviewed my free 120, I realized that I had certain weak sections that I had not noticed at all. So free 120 has 3 blocks of 40 questions each, so it's 120 questions, and it is very representative of your NBME exam. I scored really well in my first block and moderately well in my third block, but my second block took a very bad hit, and that brought down the complete average of my exam. So one reason I knew, just off the bat was that during my second block, I ran out of time actually. There were 5 questions and I had only 2 minutes left on the clock. Because of this, I could not read all the questions and choose the correct answer. So I knew I was going to get a few questions wrong because of lack of time. But I was not expecting to fall in the 60s range. So I went ahead and I saw what was wrong, and then I realized that there were a lot of gastro questions in my second block of free 120, and surprisingly I was weak at gastro. I had never thought I was weak at gastro because I had finished bootcamp videos. I had been through a first pass of first aid in gastro, and I seem to know concepts, but the questions that they had asked on free 120 was a lot of gastro questions that I had not come across before because I had not done gastro system wise in UWorld yet. I realized that my gastro was weak, so I sort of panicked and I went ahead and I took a test on my UWorld. With a system-wise gastro block. I was devastated because I scored a 55% on the block. So I needed something to improve my gastro right now. And that's when I remembered Divine Intervention podcast. And I went ahead and I started listening to Rapid Review series. I don't remember if it was Rapid Review series or Gastro series of Divine Intervention podcast. My gastro block scores in UL went from a 55% to a 75% just by listening to Divine Intervention podcast. That's how effective the podcast was. So when I got to know that this could improve my, gastro score so much, I sort of realized that maybe it's a good thing to sort of listen to all the other podcasts that is there for other subjects in Divine Intervention podcast as well. So from this week onwards, I started listening to Divine Intervention podcasts very seriously. So if you go back to this table of mine, I want to show you how significantly Divine Intervention podcast made a difference in my study. So my free 120, I had given it on 28th and I had scored 71%, and at this point my UWorld was done at 60%, right? So this is when I found out about Divine Intervention podcast, and I religiously started listening to at least 1 or 2 hours of his podcast before I slept at night. And I kid you not, my NBME scores improved literally by 10%. Okay, so from 28th to 4th, you can see that my NBME 29 score went from a 71% to a whopping 83%, and this was amazing, right? I was supposed to be really happy with this, but I was not, because I felt like this was too big of a jump to be true. People usually say that for every NBME you should be progressing by 5%. That is how much people usually progress, and I progressed almost 12%, which I felt like there was something fishy going on. So I went down the rabbit hole of going through Reddit, and I saw many people had posted that they had also scored a very high score on NBME 29, which they had not expected. So apparently NBME 29 was an easier paper and a lot of people had scored more than they had expected. So that's when I realized that yeah, probably because NBME 29 was an easy paper, that's why I was able to score an 83%. And then I started freaking out. I was like, oh my god, if I scored 83% only because the paper was easy, I don't want this pseudo confidence in my life that I'm going to pass the step 1 exam. So the very next day, I went ahead, you can see, I gave my NBME 29 on 4th, and since I was not satisfied, on the very next day, I went ahead and gave my NBME 31. So now I did not make the same mistake. I went to Reddit, I saw which NBMEs were hard or more representative of step 1. A lot of people had written that NBME 31 is very representative and it's moderately hard, it's not too easy. So immediately the next day, I went ahead and I gave NBME 31 and I scored an 80%, and I was very relieved that I did not get a high score by chance because the paper was easy, but because I actually knew the concepts. So I was a little relieved, and I had only 6 days for 5 or 6 days for the exam. From NBME 31 onwards, it was just revision. What I did was I continued my NBME reviews and I continued my Divine Intervention podcasts. Just because I'm a little crazy, I realized that all the NBMEs that I had given were offline, and people had written on Reddit that offline NBMEs tend to overestimate your scores by 2 to 3% and stuff like that. So again, I freaked out, and on 7th I gave UWSA 2 again because UWSA 2 was representative and it's also scored according to whatever percentiles that you're supposed to use, and I still got a 78%. So I was finally relieved. I was like, yeah, I am ready for the exam. I don't need to freak out so much. I can do it. So this was my journey of freaking out and figuring out and assessing and trying to improve and finally passing my exam. I want to give you guys 2 very, very important tips. Number 1 is that I really loved watching Divine Intervention podcast. Very useful for rapid review as well as very useful for building your concepts. If you guys want me to make a video on guide to how you can use Divine Intervention podcast for your step 1, I can do that as well. So that is the first important point. The second important tip that I want to really give you guys is please do not ignore ethics and biostatistics. For some reason, on my step 1 exam, I had almost 5 questions of ethics in every single block. So I had almost, if it's 7 blocks, so almost 35 to 40 questions were from ethics. So please don't neglect ethics. They are asking a lot of ethics questions in step 1 nowadays, especially, doctor-patient communication, things about autonomy, and all these very tricky questions. You'll feel like you know ethics and you can answer it however you want, but that is not at all the case. It is very, very tricky. They give some random ass stuff in the exam and you'll be really very confused. So what I did was I went through AMBOSS question bank in the last 2 days. I think 7th and 8th or 8th and 9th, 2 days I just kept for ethics and biostatistics. I think I did almost 120 to 160 questions from ethics. So don't neglect ethics, don't neglect biostatistics. That is all I had to say. I hope this video was helpful to you guys. If it was, please do let me know in the comment section below, and if you have any other questions, put it down in the comment section below. I'll try to answer them. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you guys have a nice day. Take care. Bye bye.